Hey guys, my guest today, Lisa Campion, is going to be talking about energy vampires. See you in about 5 minutes. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody's having a good Wednesday so far. It's nice to be on early. Man, my last 2 days have been very interesting indeed. My name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team based out of Sacramento, California, where it's very hot. We're 45 strong up and down the state, which means that we can get to you. But it might take us a couple days. All right, it's California. What a lot of people don't realize, California has a little bit of everything. So we've got the ocean, of course, which everybody thinks about the beaches. But we've also got a lot of farmland. We've got a lot of desert, got a lot of mountains, all that stuff. So a lot of open space, a lot of rural areas. So that when I say, we can get to you in most cases by the next day. Sometimes it takes us a couple of days to get out to help you. But don't despair. We do have mediums on staff that can phone you ahead of time and talk to you about what may or not be going on in the home. And in that case, if they feel there is something going on, they can settle it down until we can get out there. It usually doesn't take us more than 2 or 3 days to get out to a location. All right, that's the start of the show. I got a story to share with you guys that I believe, in hindsight, after having gone through it, and sitting around thinking about it last night because I worked nights, divine intervention from my father. And it was interesting to see how it all played out last night. When I finished the show, I had to do some shopping. So I worked on some reels for TikTok and decided to go to the friendly neighborhood Walmart store, the supermarket store. And so I got my car, started to drive over there. I've done that trip dozens of times during the day and at night. Last night, for some reason, I got totally lost, didn't know where I was at. Realized I was down about 7 blocks away from where I was supposed to turn. Had to cut over on another long street on the I'll say 1 Avenue, which is the main thing, and then had to double back and back to the store. Got my shopping done, got in the car, came home. I even thought, like, just before I turned the corner to go to my driveway, I thought, well, maybe I should go get some gas. But then I thought, no. So I got to go into my driveway, and there's about 4 guys standing out in front of my house with flashlights. And I'm going, well, what the heck is this? And oh, good, yeah, I can see the internet's doing its 2-step today. Lots of people online, just ignore it as much as you can. Anyway, so I go up in my driveway, park my car, and this guy comes around. He says, "Did you see anything?" And I said, "See what?" He goes, "Well, there was a hit and run about 10 minutes ago." And I said, "Really?" And because when I left, there was this white car parked in front of my house. And the way my walkway is designed, when you walk down the walkway, you can see everything in the gutter. So I get out of my car, I'm looking around, and there's this fairly large red bumper sitting at the end of my driveway in front of this white car. And it obviously was involved in the accident, and whoever had it tore it off and took the plates off of it so nobody could see it was them. And I'm talking to these guys about this, and I said, well, when did this happen? And they said, well, just recently, within the last 5-10 minutes. So I took pictures of the car and all that, and we were trying to find the owners, because I knew it was one of the neighbors, but nobody was answering. So I finally went in the house, and that's when I got to thinking about this. All that, I've been doing this for a couple of years, going to the same store, usually at night, because that's when I work. And I've never gotten confused or lost going out to the store before. And when I think about it, had I been that 5 or 10 minutes earlier into my driveway, I might have got hit too. So it was definitely coming from my dad. Definitely. That's my dad's style of things. Plus, there's been weird things happening. We started reading that Omnipresent by Lynn Monet, and she puts a disclaimer in the front that before you even read this book, she's heard cases from people that have had activity, after reading this book. And so I thought I had everything grounded here, but it's just weird because I've got weird things going on. And so I honestly believe it's from the book, because I can tell this house is haunted anyway, but I can tell when they're not ghosts that belong here, that it's something different. So I've got something different going on. In fact, when I was getting ready for the show today, my alarm, I have a digital clock over here, high EMF, I know. And I thought I was way behind, like 20 minutes behind schedule. So I'm trying to hurry everything up. Come to find out, the clock's 20 minutes ahead. And there's no reason for it to be 20 minutes ahead. Because you guys know, if you unplug these clocks, they've got a backup battery, they'll stay on that time forever, or they start blinking, right? So I have no explanation for it. So I'm going to have to do some cleansing later on today. Okay, getting back to the show. If you're watching from Facebook today and you enjoy what you see and you haven't done so already, feel free to hit that follow button. And remember, I'm looking for happy faces and all that good stuff and thumbs up and comments. Please feel free to comment during the show because that puts me up higher in that band hierarchy to where they'll distribute the show to even more places. Okay, you guys have been doing really good with that, so let's keep that up. We're back on YouTube after a 7-day stint in jail. I heard the applause. Thank you. And so if you're watching from YouTube, the same thing goes for YouTube as it goes for Facebook, in that the more thumbs up you give me, the more clicks, the more smiles and all that, the higher in that thing we go. I forget. My mind's like, I'm tired. My mind's like chilling. And it puts us out there to more people. So yeah, let's keep that up. And also, if you haven't subscribed to YouTube, our YouTube channel, please do. I've got 672 videos sitting over there. And they're all on different paranormal topics. In fact, some aren't paranormal topics. I'm a journalist, photojournalist, so I'd like to change it up. So sometimes I might be talking about spousal abuse or maybe a boat sinking in one of the Great Lakes, things like that. I like to change it up. So check it out. I categorized a lot of the stuff that's over on YouTube to make it easier to find. Otherwise, it's a big jumble of stuff. If you want to look for something with Nancy Matz, find the Nancy Matz file. Want to look at demonic stuff? Find the demonic file stuff, etc., etc., etc. down the line. So anyway, I'm done with that. I will be teaching a psychic development class on August 5th at 7 p.m. Pacific. You can get a hold of that at the meetup.com, and sign up over there at California Haunts Meetup. Also, I am going to be doing morning meditations, and I'm putting together like a club for that. Of course, there's a small fee, and it's like a monthly thing. So every day we can, the people that sign up can sit down and enjoy meditation, or if they work or whatever, they can come home, click on it, and meditate. So I'm going to teach them how to meditate, different meditation techniques, okay, for health and all that. So that's something I'm going to be setting up today, and you'll be able to do that after 4:00 p.m. Pacific over on the California Haunts Meetup site. Okay, now, current business. My guest tonight is a world-renowned sensitive healer, psychic, whatever you want to call it. Her name is Lisa Campion. I've heard her on other shows, plus seen her in other places. So I'm real excited to have her. And I really want to talk about energy vampires because there's a lot of those out there. Trust me, I have friends that are, I'm not going to say it, people I know. Okay, so Grogu's here. We're ready to go. I got the force behind me. So without further ado, let me bring Lisa in and we'll get this show on the road. Oh, yeah, and you'll hear my old dog. He's 16, the one that's usually in here when I do the shows. He's being very vocal today. He's senile and he forgets where he's at, so he raises heck. So you're going to hear him in the other room. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm out of breath now, but I'm good.
That's nice. Thank you so much for having me on your show. This is cool.
I'm so excited. So tell me about you.
Well, I started my life as a psychic. I was one of those I'd see dead people, kids.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much of a challenge for me. I was born in the 60s, so I was growing up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And back then, it wasn't really cool to be a psychic.
Right.
It was a problem. And I was just trying to pretend to be normal in public and trying to figure out what was going on around me, like what is happening here. Actually, it sparked in me a really deep love for paranormal movies and ghost movies. Like I got my early education by watching movies like Poltergeist. And then I started working as a psychic when I was 19 years old. I've really never done anything else except work in this world. I've been an energy healer for 25 years and a counselor too. So these days I feel like my work is about training psychics, healers, and empaths to fully step into their gifts because I think the world needs all the healers it can get. And I love people. I love to help people figure out how to do it in a more graceful way than I did because I made every mistake in the book. Back then, there were no books in the library, no podcasts like this, no information that I could can find around, what being a sensitive was all about, what being an empath was, what was happening for me psychically. I don't know, it was rough. So I'm really dedicated to helping people do it the easy way. I did it the hard way. And I love helping people who are opening up. So many people are going through psychic openings right now and need help.
I can understand that. I went through the same thing you did. I grew up,
Mhm.
I was born with abilities, and my
Yeah.
family dismissed it, saying I had a real vivid imagination. But I remember
Yeah.
back when I first started ghost hunting 19 years ago, even though my house was always active because I saw it. I remember the
Hmm.
stigma that was attached to mediums and psychics, and also ghost hunting teams. Same
Yeah.
kind of stigma, and it's so nice now because these TV shows have opened that up. But I remember
Hmm.
things were just starting to turn around. For a while there, when I first, because before we used to film another team, so we were a TV show first, and then when I started to build my own team, the stigmata was starting to change. Where people took us
Yeah.
more seriously. But I remember, I'm not going to say what show it is, but a certain show came out where the guys were jumping out windows and stuff because they were scared. And my first thought was, "Oh my God, we're going to get a step back here because of these guys."
Yeah.
So I
I
was really
know.
afraid of that. But it
I
has, you're
understand.
right. Yeah, it has opened up a lot. And I'm self-taught as well. When I started realizing that, because you have this stuff when you're little, and then at some point in your life, you push it aside because you got other things going on. You're a teenager, and then suddenly you realize at a certain age that, oh my God, I have these abilities, and so I didn't know how to handle it. So the only way I was able to handle it, like you say, there were no books, was Sylvia Brown was on Montel.
Yeah.
And I remember why I would watch her because she made me feel good about it because it scared me.
Yeah. I know. And it is scary. And I think a lot of us, have difficult experiences, scary experiences. When I was a kid, I grew up in a super haunted house. And I honestly think it was haunted because I lived there. Like psychic children, especially
Yeah.
kids with mediumship ability, were like ghost magnets.
Hmm.
So I used to call them the gray people. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and the gray people were standing around my bed and talking to me. And I knew that if I talked to them and listened to them and communicated, even though I was so little, I was like 8 years old, that they
Hmm.
felt better.
Right.
And I would
Right.
have my nightly conversations with the gray people. And then I saw the movie Poltergeist. I snuck into the movie theater. I was probably 12. And there's this professional psychic. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, that's the thing. You can do that. I'm gonna be that. That's what I'm gonna do. And fortunately for me, like my parents were hippies and they took
Hmm.
me to transcendental meditation when I was 10, because that's when you did when you were a hippie in 1974. I was really into martial arts. I wanted to be a Jedi Knight. I was a Star Wars fanatic. And I wanted to be a Jedi. The only way I could figure out to be a Jedi Knight was to study martial arts. And it helped me a lot in understanding boundaries and energy. And then it was the 80s and the new age. It was the dawn of the new age. And then there were teachers. There was, I started really training, getting teachers. And that's when I started working as a psychic too. But I did house clearings for years back in the late 90s and early 2000s. Had no idea what I was doing. Somebody was like, can you come over and look at my house? And I was like, sure, definitely. Like I went alone. I had no idea. It was terrible. And gosh, that I made so many mistakes to the point where I really got into trouble. Like I had things follow me home. I had something really nasty follow me home and sort of torment my children, actually. And I was very, very sick for quite a while until I figured out really how to do it. And that was before there was paranormal shows on
Right.
TV and
Right.
stuff.
Right.
But that, like I said, I made every mistake in the book, and now I know a lot about psychic self-defense. It's sort of one of my specialties. I always teach psychic self-defense and psychic development together because I feel like
Awesome.
as we open, we need higher and higher levels of psychic self-defense so we can be protected, we can have good boundaries,
Hmm.
and all that.
Oh, absolutely. I understand your story completely. It sounds very, very, very familiar, with mine. So
Yeah.
we're compadres there. Um, let's talk about energy vampires a little bit because people don't realize. I always say that. My family looks at me like I'm crazy. And I said, I was at the mall today and somebody sucked the blood right out from me. And they look at me like I'm
Mhm.
crazy. What is an what is an energy vampire?
Energy vampires are people that don't know how to source their own energy, how to sort of fill themselves energetically. So they learn how to provide energy, life force energy for themselves by latching on to other people and sort of draining them. Like some people are energy givers, some people are givers, and some people are takers, right? Some people are energy givers and some people are energy takers. And many of them, there's a couple of different types. of energy vampires. Some of them are really, really, really quite dangerous and really understand, or they really know what they're doing. Others are people that have no idea. And if you told them they were an energy vampire, they'd be like shocked and horrified. And us sensitive people are really susceptible. We're like a nice, tasty snack for them. And sometimes it's even us sensitive people that are the guilty of being energy vampires. So I think being an energy vampire is a process anyone can fall into. You can go have a hard time in your life, go through some tragedy or fall on hard times and end up temporarily being an energy vampire. So we just need to know about it so that we don't do that. And we need to learn how to spot the really dangerous types kind of in advance so that we can recognize them and not they really can be quite dangerous and bad, to really take a bite out of you.
Let me ask you something about attachments. When you end up with an attachment, is that kind of like an energy vampire? Because are they attaching because they're trying to like feel your energy, or do they have other reasons?
I think we can divide energy vampires into two categories: human living people, which is most of the time that's what you're getting, and non-human spirits, like entities, we call them, really, non like spirit guides are the beneficial non-physical beings that are here to help us. Entities are spirits that don't have our best interests at heart, and most of them are parasitic in nature, and if you engage in some unsafe psychic practices, you can open the door, like Ouija board, for example. You might open the door to the astral realm, which is where most of these the lower astral realm, where most of these parasitic attachments come from, and they're like a tick on your dog, or mosquito. That they're not the lower level ones can be quite intelligent and dangerous. A lot of them are not like a tick or a leech. They're not really very smart, but we don't want them because they do drain our life force energy.
Absolutely. And like people who don't or who aren't psychic, they don't realize that drain that psychics go through, because I know I used to jokingly call it getting goosed by a ghost. Because the minute my stomach would flip, I knew it. I was going to be down for 2 days.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, and stuck dead people can fall into that category too. And ghosts, they're really just people who are in a bad situation. They're in trouble. They're lost. They're stuck. They need help. They're desperate. If you think about like a drowning person, right? Drowning. If you get too close to a drowning person, they'll take you down, right? And a lot of times when we're dealing with the stuck dead people, that's what happens. And us empath types and sensitives can be quite vulnerable to them. We can have a vulnerability or like a susceptibility. They want to be around us because we're psychic, because maybe we see or sense them, because we have the soul of a healer, and they know or think we can help them. So and I find that it's not true for all stuck dead people, but there are the really desperate ones, the really ones who are really in trouble, can really like latch on to you and cause a lot of problems that way.
Well, going back to your reference of growing up and watching Poltergeist, that's a perfect example. Because they were latching on to Carol Ann because of her energy. Because they liked her energy. Yeah.
Yeah. Really pure spirits, those empath types, the really pure spirits are often very vulnerable to these beings, whether they're stuck dead people, non-human entities, or living people, energy vampires. Because we don't have very good boundaries as empaths, because we're so sweet natured and sensitive, because we have the soul of a healer. All those things kind of combine together to make us that like tasty little snack that someone, and if you're a sensitive or an empath, you're shopping in the middle of the supermarket and somebody's going to come up to you and tell you their life story. Why? Because they can feel the sensitive, compassionate nature of our hearts. They're like, that person's going to help me. It's like an unconscious thing. People can just feel that about us. So we need to learn really good energy management, protection and psychic protection, so we can go out and about in public and not have every needy, depressed person or every stuck ghost within a 5-mile radius come like latch onto us. Right.
Now that brings me back to my question that I was going to ask. Can you tell, I mean, just by talking to somebody that they're an energy vampire, or does it just go to the point where once you talk to them and they leave, and suddenly you realize, I'm tired. These people are trying to suck it out of me.
I think sometimes we feel it right away. if you're going to feel, you may feel really uncomfortable. You may have a desire to cross your arms over your chest. And it's through this solar plexus chakra that, where a lot of times they hook into us. So we get uncomfortable. We instinctively fold our arms over that part of us. And that's sort of a sign. If you're doing that, that's a sign that maybe you're getting drained. If you're getting like a low back of the neck, sort of occipital headache, that's a sign that you might be getting drained. If you just feel like, I've been in a situation where somebody was talking and I just like literally felt like lying down on the floor and taking a nap right where I was. That's not good. If you dream about them, like after the encounter's over, that there's some sort of maybe psychic stalking going on, and so sometimes we can feel it in the moment. If you have a sense of dread, that's, that person's going to come around and you're like, oh no, not that person, that is also not a good sign. That's a sign that that person is potentially draining you. So I think we can feel it in the moment, and sometimes we don't feel it until afterwards.
Now, are there more are there more energy vampires than anything else out there, or are there other ways that your stuff can get drained?
I think there are a lot. I don't think it's everybody. Certainly, like, I don't know, there's some kind of, I've never been able to put a percentage to it. I think most people are not, you know what I mean? They're just, maybe there's like 10 to 20% of the world are energy vampires. 10 to 20% of the world are super sensitive empath types. And they seems to me like we're opposite ends of the same polarity, And so if you're a sensitive, an empath, you may really attract an abnormal amount of energy vampires. The more sensitive you are, the more likely you are to have them. And the really predatory type, we can also just swap out the word narcissist. There's been a lot, or psychopath, right? There's been a lot of talk lately about narcissistic people, psychopathic people. And they are the predatory type energy vampires that are very dangerous. And they will sort of consciously search for a person who they consider like an energy supply, right? So we're like a battery for them, and they will love bomb you. They will, and they're very psychic too. So they use their incredible psychic senses to figure out what you want, who you are, and then they sort of morph. They're very shapeshifty. They're like con artists, basically. And so they become the person that you need or want, and they love bomb. They set the hook, they get you hooked, and then once you're connected to them, you're in a relationship with them, you're married to them, they start to drain you. And it might be your life force energy, your time, your attention, your money, the food in your fridge, the gas in your car, whatever you have becomes their supply there, and they don't feel really any remorse. This is like, like where we sort of cross the line from narcissism into the psychopath territory. They don't feel remorse. They're just, if they feel like it's their right, and if you're falling for their tricks, it's because you're stupid. It's your fault for being dumb enough to fall for their tricks. It doesn't pay to go to couples therapy or counseling with them. They have no interest in changing. And as soon as you set boundaries and say no, they will drop you like a hot potato and go without remorse and go find somebody else who is gonna, let them. There's always another person who's gonna, and it doesn't have to be a partner. It can be your boss. It can be somebody you work with. It can be a friend. It can be one of your children or one of your parents. It's not always in a romantic partnership that this happens. It can be any type of relationship. And we just, it can be really, really damaging, especially if you spend a lot of time with that person. You're married to that person for 20 years, or for 20 years, they're your boss or your mother-in-law or whoever, they really can do a job on us. Most people who come out of those relationships have a PTSD, and they really do a number on us, and we need to spend some time healing after we've been in a hit and run encounter with a energy vampire like that.
Now, like to go shopping and maybe at the shopping mall or whatever, is there any way to prepare yourself for that so that they don't latch on?
Yeah, for sure. And you're not really likely to come into contact if you're just casually out, you might, you're more likely to run into, an entity or somebody who's like could be like the person you're dealing with in the checkout line, or even just being in an environment like that can be very draining to some people who are sensitive. So all the sensory stimulation, all the lights and noise of people and chaos and residual energy and all just this, where there's a lot of people humaning, there's psychic static that sensitive people are very prone to. So sometimes we're just drained by the presence of all that chaos. And if you're very sensitive, then doing some energy management basics, learning how to ground yourself. I go through like a few steps of grounding myself, getting in my body, clearing the energy that I picked up. I use a breathing and meditation visualization practice. So releasing energy that I picked up from other people and setting my shields on full, you know what I mean? Like really creating a strong boundary. And this is my story about this is like Costco. Those big box stores, Costco, Walmart, are extremely difficult for us sensitive people. And I sit in my car before I go into Costco and I bubble up. I get inside my energy bubble. I get really grounded. I have my list with me. You know, sometimes I wear an EMF shield because the EMF places like that are kind of like there's a lot of toxic EMF radiation going on in a place like that. And if I don't do that, I get into the back of Costco, like 20 minutes into Costco, and I'm like, I'm like ready to lie down on the floor and cry. I can't remember my name. I can't remember where I parked my car. I can't remember what I came in there for. I'm like, just get me out of here, right? And I think lots of sensitive people have had that experience. So definitely before you're going someplace, before you get on an airplane, before you go to the movie theater, before you go to Costco or Walmart, we need to learn, before you deal with a person you know is an energy vampire, because we can't always get away from them, right? We can practice these energy management, some psychic self-defense and energy management practices that make being in the world tolerable and possible, actually.
Now, for someone that is involved with an energy vampire or some kind of attachment, is there a simple way to get them off of you, or is it a complicated process?
Sort of depends, you know. If it's somebody you've been married to for 20 years, you have an issue that's gonna take some time, you know. If it's just sort of a energy vampire hit and run, like you talk to them for an hour, or you met them at a party, or it's easier, right? So we want to do like cord clearing is something that they tend to connect, like they drain us by actually connecting these energetic cords. Psychics can see them, energy practitioners feel them and sense these cords that go between us. And so we wanted like a daily practice of clearing cords. And you ask Archangel Michael, he loves to work on that, to bring his big sword and clear any cords, between you and other people. You can take a big crystal and do it. You can use your breath to do it. Running water works really well. So standing under the shower and asking Archangel Michael to clear any cords. I feel them often in my heart and in my solar plexus, in my navel area, and I feel like tugging, pulling there if I've been around somebody. And so we need to do these things on a daily basis. You can learn how to do them. You can probably find YouTube videos about how to clear cords. And you can find energy medicine practitioners like Reiki practitioners who will do it for you. And it's really much easier if you had like a quick interaction with somebody. They come really easily. Obviously, if that energy cord is with your mother or with your kid or with your spouse, it's going to take longer because those relationships are just stickier. And, the longer we're in relationship with somebody and the more dysfunctional the relationship is, the more difficult it is to clear those cords.
Now, people that are energy vampires, do they realize that they're doing this or no?
I would say most of the time they don't. Sometimes they do. And when I wrote my book, Energy Healing for Empaths, I was really shocked by how many people wrote me and emailed me and said, I know I'm an energy vampire and I want to stop. Shocked. I had no idea. I was like, oh, they really don't know. And I think people who recognize themselves as being narcissists are often that case. They're sort of lacking empathy for other people. There's kind of an entitlement, like, well, you're gonna serve me, you're gonna give to me, like I don't have to give to you. Like that's the root of narcissism, right? And I heard from so many people are like, yeah, I'm a narcissist. I don't really like it. I don't want to be that way. How do I stop? And so I thought that was great. I was surprised. And then there are a lot of people who have no idea that some people don't, the predatory ones, the psychopathic ones, they don't care. whether they know, they're like, whatever, this is the way I roll. And if you're stupid enough to fall prey to me, well, that's on you. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then sometimes a lot of them, there's a kind of, that's called the victim energy vampire. They often don't know. And those are people that really have used whatever, we've all had things happen to us. We've all been victimized in some way. Life is hard, right? But some people like rise above whatever happened and kind of like, whatever, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? There's some people that go that way. Other people really like learn to use whatever happened to them as sort of currency. It's kind of like food, like, well, you have to accommodate me. I can't do this on my own. You need to help me. And those victim energy vampires, they can be so draining. They're really likely, you're really likely to feel very resentful of them if you have them in your life. People who can't seem to take care of themselves and require you to do it for them. And oftentimes it's like our family, someone in our families like that, or we get kind of roped into that. They often don't know. And they're the ones that would be horrified. And the other ones are the sensitive and empath. So like, how do vampires get made, right? A big bad vampire finds a little sensitive person, sucks the life out of them until they're drained. And then that person becomes a vampire. And it happens between narcissists and empaths all the time. So if you're an empath and a sensitive and you let yourself get drained and drained and drained and drained and drained and drained, you might be now an energy vampire. And oftentimes it's the people who are like throwing shade at all the energy vampires of the world have no idea that they are actually also energy vampires. So if you're a sensitive, and you need to be really mindful of your own managing your own energy so you don't fall into the trap of becoming an energy vampire yourself.
I was just
sometimes thinking that's people are so horrified. You're like, don't tell me I'm an energy vampire. Oh my God.
Absolutely. I was just thinking as you were saying this, people that are sensitive, we're all sensitive when we're born. So it kind of gets pushed down. So what about people that don't realize they're sensitive and they think they might be running into somebody like this?
I'm so glad that there are podcasts like this and books like, that I wrote and the podcasts that you have and the classes you teach and everything, because so many more people are waking up to the idea that they're sensitive. And as we get this material out there, people know that they are, then we can make some decisions about what we want to do about it. I always encourage people to own it, really like own it, know that you are, say that you are, and then do something about it. Get some help, get some training, the most vulnerable people are people with a lot of psychic ability and no training. The more psychic ability you have naturally, the more you need to train it, the more skills you need. And the same thing with sensitives. The more empathic you are, the more you need to own that you are, understand that you are, and get some help, learn some things about it so that you can understand that your sensitivity is really your superpower. Does it feel that way until we get some training? And then it does.
Now you mentioned you do psychic development class. So do I, level 1. How important is it for people to understand how to open that psychic door and close it?
So important. It's so important. And especially if you have mediumship abilities, and you're prone to talking to dead people, and that's only one of many psychic skills. As a psychic, I'm sort of a generalist. You know what I mean? Like I do a lot of things. I'm really like a soul reader. So I learn how I read people on the level of the soul. We talk about past lives. We talk about your life purpose. We talk about who your guides are, where you're going in your journey. And if you're a medium, like, you specialize in mediumship, it's so critical to learn how to close the door. But really, any psychic needs to do that. And I think all psychics need some functional mediumship. We all need to learn mediumship. If I ever want to get a good night's sleep at an Airbnb, I'm going to do some mediumship,
Sure.
And so we need to do that. And that's why things like Ouija boards and some sort of this spiritual practice, even some ghost busting practices, can be really difficult if you don't know how to, like if you're doing a ton of EVPs or you're doing some provocation or you're doing like trigger object sessions. If you're not closing the door behind you, then you can make it worse. You can like take what was a little problem and make it a big problem. And I see this a lot in places that do like paranormal tourism. Like that place wasn't so haunted, but now it's really haunted because 8 million people have gone through there and opened the portal more and more and more, opened the door more and more and more. Now there's a really big problem there. So I don't think it has to go down that way, but if we're not mindful about it, it can.
I agree with you 100% with this because I've seen it with what I call budding psychics, the people that think they have abilities, and their attitude is, well, I don't need the help, I can handle it. And then, even going on ghost hunts with us, within a couple of ghost hunts, they're beside themselves because they're at home, they've got stuff coming into their house, they don't know why it's coming into their house or in their bedroom at night. And it's because they haven't trained to be able to open and close that door. I always tell my students, I say, you know what? It may take us an hour or whatever to teach you how to open and close that door, but even if you open it a crack, it's not all going to be nice.
Nope, it's not. Especially in a haunting, nobody calls you over for ghost recovery process because their house is filled with great spirits. You know what I mean? You've got a problem. Like it's a hard. You're walking into trouble and you don't really know what you've got until you get in there. A lot of the times, I always say it's like, and I think the paranormal worlds, ghost hunting worlds, paranormal TV, it like attracts people that are really want it to be true, but they're not 100% sure. They don't 100% believe that. So they don't take precautions, or they do these sort of more provocative things because they want proof that it's real, which in my mind is a little bit like chumming the water and then jumping in to see whether sharks are real.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, like, okay, that's a really painful way to find out that sharks are real. Let's not do it that way. Let's, take precautions. And a lot of those guys jumping out of the windows, paranormal. I'm not saying I know who you mean, but I do because they're from my home state. I think, well, if they had psychics with them or they took precautions, some of the really good teams do that. They have psychics with them. They take precautions. They're working on actually helping everybody. Like, let's help the spirits that need crossover. Let's help the the people who are living there. It's not like a zoo where these are spirits of people. Most of the time, not all the time. And there are other fellow human beings who need help. Let's have some kindness and compassion and not just try to make good TV. You know what I mean? And I think they sometimes they go to extremes because it's got to look good on TV. And for the most part, it's slow. It's not always something's happening every second of the day when you're doing paranormal investigations. So anyway, that's my thought.
Well, staying on the TV topic, I noticed stuff too. I don't know if you noticed this early on, like in the early '90s. 19 years ago when I started doing this, it used to be when you investigated somebody's house, it usually turned out to be Uncle Bob or Grandpa or the deceased husband. But with the advent of these paranormal shows playing this stuff up, all this demon crap and all this. When people call you now, they don't believe it's their Uncle Bob or whatever. Right away, it's a demon. I need a cleansing. I know it's a demon.
Yeah.
I know it's a demon. And it's hard to explain to people that, we can't just go in and do a cleansing because we need to go out there and figure out what the hell's going on. I mean, who really is out there? But that's the trend I've seen is it went from being Uncle Bob or Aunt Susie or some family member to it's always a demon.
Yeah. I know. It used to, like in the medieval ages, it was always a demon too. You know what I mean? Like it was, they didn't know how to explain mental illness or physical illness. It was always a demon. And then we went into the age of reason where it was never a demon, even though sometimes it might be, and now I think, that paranormal TV, it really gets people all anxious about that. Sometimes it is. Most of the time it's something else. It's a residual haunting or it's a human spirit or it's a non-human spirit that's not a demon. And if sometimes it is, but let's hope it isn't, because that's really a problem. That's really an issue, and I just think Ouija boards, man, like some of the things, so much trouble happens because of spirit boards or sort of unsafe psychic practices. And if you don't want a demon, like, don't join a satanic cult. Don't do blood sacrifices. Don't look up on the internet how to conjure a demon. Don't do that. Like, there's some like common sense. Demons are actually pretty hard to come by, and you sort of have to invite them, in. And that's not so true of just the lower astrals that are just around. and these like, don't take the Ouija board to the abandoned mental hospital and smoke a lot of weed on Halloween on a full moon. And, like that's good. There's so many things that are just a setup, and some people just don't know. Like they don't, they're walking in sort of blind. They don't really, or they don't quite believe, that they're looking for that sort of thrill, and they just, that's sort of the chumming the water kind of things. And it doesn't have to be that way. And, we can do it. It's an incredibly powerful service to provide people, like, to really help people that really, really, really need help. And I'm sure, it sounds like that's what your organization does. And that's providing an incredibly important, healing, service for people that are desperate and really need help. They really need people who know what they're doing to help them out. So I'm glad you're doing it.
It's all about education. People need to learn that. And they do. People do make mistakes. I mean, even I had a Ouija board as a kid. We all.
Well, so did I. We all did.
We all did.
We all did, and we didn't know. And a lot of times people don't know. And I just mortified my children by walking up, like, I was picking up my kids at school one day, and there were some kids playing with a Ouija board, and I'm like, let me tell you about that. And my kids were like, Mom, you're so embarrassing. Why did you do that? And I'm like, important safety tip. Like, let's because you find it in the toy section of a store.
Oh my God. Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, so how dangerous could it be if it's in a toy section in a store? And sometimes it's fine. It's just not every single time ends in disaster, but some of the most gnarly cases I ever had to deal with came from Ouija boards.
And when you talk about them being in a store, I was over at Barnes & Noble. I'm going to name it. I don't care. And they actually have a pink one for girls, for little girls.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. The stuff like it's just like, okay. But see, I mean, these guys don't believe in that stuff, or maybe they do. Maybe that's the whole point, is these people that manufacture these things, who knows, Like the movie Damien, right? They were all over the place.
Right.
So you don't know. But, maybe the manufacturer's unaware of what they are and what they do.
Right. Or is it part of the darker conspiracy?
Right.
We don't, I don't know.
To get everybody on the line. Question in the chat room is, and we talked about this a little bit, how do you protect yourself against energy vampires?
I think like learning how to recognize them is really important. I think it's all about setting boundaries. So setting energetic boundaries, like really working on the outside edge of your bubble, learning a lot of ways to say no. And And there's this technique that I love. It's called the energy close technique. And to do this, you can do it sitting or standing, but you kind of stand with your feet together and your knees together. You put your hands together kind of like in a prayer position, or like this. You put your tongue on the roof of your mouth, and then you don't look in their eye. So like you look at their eye, you look at their forehead, or you look at their eyebrow, and then you don't say much. I've done this. I've done this all over. When I met a politician once. I've done it when I was on TV, actually. And you just like, because eye contact is a really powerful way for them to get in. And especially if we're sensitive, we're psychic. If you're a visual psychic like I am, we perceive a lot through our eyes. It's they say they're the windows to the soul. So eye contact can be a really powerful way somebody gets right into your energy field. So I think it's about knowing a lot of different ways to have boundaries. And some of that is energetic and psychic self-defense. And some of that is lots of really nice ways to say no, like, no, I can't talk on the phone. We all have that friend that calls you on the phone, talks for an hour and a half about the same problems over and over again. They don't do anything to help themselves. They don't really hear what you want to say. They just want to dump all their stuff. And they're like, how are you? Oh, sorry, gotta go. Boom, boom. Right. And you're like, oh, that's the victim type vampire. And so what we need to do is learn to say, no, I've got 10 minutes. I can talk to you. I have 5 minutes. I can talk to you. I have 10 minutes. I can talk to you once a month or whatever it is, so that we can, we don't just, so as empaths, we're so kind. We really care. We're such big hearted people. We really want to help. And yet dealing with that type of energy, you might as well just like cut your wrist and pour that blood right on the sand. You know what I mean? Because it's like a black hole. There's never enough attention you can give somebody like that. They're not really interested in changing. They don't really want to hear what you have to say. They don't take steps to change their life. They're sort of enjoying their misery in a way. And if you get roped into that, they're just going to take a huge bite out of you. And thanks for that. Bye-bye. Got to go now, you know? So we need to learn how to say no, how to set boundaries. I'm not going to talk to you for an hour every day. I'm going to talk to you for 10 minutes once a month or whatever it is, you know, even if it's a relative, even if it's, you know, somebody important in your life. We can't always cut these people out of our lives totally. What if it's your boss? What if it's your kid? What if it's your parent? Like and in those cases, we need, you know, it's really hard in work environments when you're running into these people. Like we want to learn how to set boundaries where we don't get fired, you know, where we can still do our job. And that means practicing a lot of ways to say no and shields on full.
Absolutely. Now you kind of touched on your abilities. Every psychic has a different way they work and they see things. What do you see when you're doing a reading? Are you actually seeing the people that you're reading as far as the ghosts go, or do you feel it a different way?
I'm mostly a visual psychic, but I get it really on all the channels. You know what I mean? So sometimes I feel emotions because I'm an empath. Sometimes I just know stuff. A lot of times I'm hearing a voice inside my head. It's kind of coming on all channels and all at once, you know, because I've been doing this for, you know, I hate to say it, 40 years. You know, now. And I'm like, it's 25 years. When I really did the math, I was like, oh, it's 40 years. Dang, where'd the time go? Right. So, you know, so I'm getting it on all the channels, kind of like a push through my whole system. But primarily I'm a visual psychic, and it's the most rare. It's the biggest pain in the bum. If you have that one, you kind of often wish you didn't. It can be quite disruptive to be a visual psychic. And what's sad for me is a lot of people feel like they're not psychic because they're not visual. Well, I don't see anything. This happens to me all the time. And they, you know, let's say you do guided meditation, you know, for somebody, and they're talking to their guides and they're having a lot of experiences, but they dismiss it all because they're not seeing anything.
Right.
Well, you might not be because it's the most rare, but you might be feeling things, knowing things, sensing things, hearing things, you know. We have so many channels that we're receiving psychic information through that I really don't want anyone to dismiss what they're getting because they don't see. Somehow seeing has become synonymous with psychic, and it's not really. Like, let's talk about perceiving. What are you perceiving? What are you experiencing? Because those two words open us up to all of our psychic senses. Well, I'm feeling this thing. I'm feeling this pressure in my chest. I'm feeling all this emotion. I'm just getting this knowing, this sense, you know, I'm just sensing and knowing. I'm hearing something. Wow, there's a lot going on, even if you're not seeing.
Yeah, that's one of my philosophies too, is that when I teach, I always tell them that there's no wrong answer. Because they may be picking up something that I'm not picking up, or vice versa. And you know, I don't know about you, but when I get the messages, like you say, I hear them in my head. I'll hear the voices. I'll just start jotting stuff down, what they're telling me, to try and piece it together.
That's great. That's automatic writing is such a good way to go. And automatic writing, especially if you're an auditory psychic, clairaudient, writing is something that will help you develop that. And here's a really good exercise. For example, let's say you want to talk to dead Uncle Fred. Try getting a picture of Uncle Fred, light a little white candle maybe and a little stick of incense, and you're like, I only want Uncle Fred. And then you write down, I write on my computer because I'm faster than writing longhand, but you can write longhand, and you ask a question. Hey, Uncle Fred, how you doing over there? And you just start writing down. Like, it feels in the beginning like you're making it up. It feels like you're just pretending, or it's just your imagination. But if you keep going, pretty soon it's Uncle Fred is really answering you, and you can kind of like look back on it and go, oh my God, that's just exactly what he would say, and the way he would say it. If you're not sure, you can get your pendulum out and use your pendulum to yes or no, yes, no. Was that Uncle Fred? You know, and get an answer from or muscle testing can be also a powerful way to get confirmation. And automatic writing is probably the best way to strengthen the auditory psychic skill. So that's great that you're doing that.
Let me ask you about muscle testing. I've never heard of that. Tell me about it.
So muscle testing is a kind of way to get a yes/no answer, like a pendulum. And when we work with a pendulum or any dowsing tool, dowsing rods or something like that, we want to get a yes/no, I don't know. question out of it. We can do the same thing with muscle testing. So the way that I learned it is you take your pinky finger and your thumb and you kind of squeeze them together. And then you take your other hand and you're like, show me yes. So when it's yes for me, it's strong. I can't break it. Show me no. And I break it, And so you can check, well, was that Uncle Fred? Yes, it was. Was it something that was it really an angel? Like, what was it? And we can go through a series of questions, and you can do the same thing with a pendulum. But if you don't have a pendulum, you can muscle test. Some people sway, like if you're standing up, like moving forward is yes and moving backward is a no. Energy healers do this a lot when we're asking questions in healing sessions.
Interesting. When you talk about the sway, now I have done that in portals. Like if I'm in the building, to see if there's an opening there, to stand where the opening is, put my arms out to my side, and see if I'm swaying back and forth from the energy.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's really good. You can also use dowsing rods, rods are really good for that, or even a pendulum. I find the pendulum is a little too small often for a space, but you can walk through. My grandparents were from Vermont. That's where dowsing is from, So many people in my neck of the woods do you work with dowsing rods, and you can walk around your space holding the dowsing rods, and when you hit a portal, they open up. That's a really cool tool too.
When we talk about getting back to energy vampires, I know there's a lot of people that are out there that are vampires and they don't realize it. For a psychic as yourself and as sensitive as you are, is it hard for you to go into public places like malls and stuff?
Totally. It always has been. And I'm better now because I work at it. You know what I mean? So before I go into the mall, before I get on the airplane, before I go to the movie theater, I work it. I sit in my car. I do my ground, clear, protect, shields on full. I wear an EMF shield. And then I take a break if I get halfway through the mall or halfway into Costco and I need a break. I go into the ladies' room. I do it again. I wash my hands and I say, with this water and this soap, I'm washing away any energy that I picked up that does not belong to me. And then I put my shields on full again. I was kind of a science fiction geek when I was a kid. Well, I still am, but I was like a Star Wars, Star Trek kind of chick. So like shields, like shields on full, Captain. And you imagine that thing coming all around you, like that works. We have like the outside edge of our energy field, which is usually about arm's length out, has a boundary layer to it. And it's like we're inside our own little egg. And if you're a sensitive, an empath, that boundary layer is more like a sponge. That's why they call empaths psychic sponges. And that's great because that's how we get all the psychic information we're getting. That's how we feel what's going on with a person or a haunted place that we're dealing with. And the problem with it is we're absorbing all that stuff like halfway through the mall or halfway through Costco. Your sponge is full. And when your sponge is full, you hit something called empathic overload. You don't feel good. You leave your body. You have a headache. You get cranky. You get exhausted. You have a meltdown of some kind. You have to go home and take a nap, right? So we want to avoid this empathic overload. That means we can use the power of our imagination, our intention, to make the bubble to make this more solid, to make it something like really like a castle wall, a coconut shell, the energy field from Star Trek, whatever it is your image you're using. And when we do that, we can change our sponge to be something more solid. And that's what non-sensitive people are dealing with all the time. People who are non-empathic, they have a solid boundary between them and the world. And so they're not having the problems we're having. And it makes us great healers, therapists, counselors, paranormal investigators, psychics, Reiki practitioners. All those things are beautiful, and we need some help. Otherwise, we're constantly overwhelmed with other people's energetic goo. I call it energy goo. It's a technical term.
Absolutely. When you're out helping somebody, like you go to somebody's home to cleanse a house, have you ever had, and I know I've kind of run into this, and you hear stories about this, have you ever had an entity lie to you? As far as
they do, they lie. So they lie. Absolutely. The more intelligent they are and the more sort of evil they are, the more they lie. And so there's a certain kind of lower astral entity. I always call them the face changers. And a lot of times newbie psychics get them, like if you don't really know, like your psychic gifts are just opening up and you don't really know what you're doing, and maybe you're doing some unsafe psychic practices, you're likely to connect with these beings from the astral plane. They're not good ones to connect. They're not high level guides. They don't have your best interests at heart, and they will often lie. They're like, I'm really Jesus. Oh, yes, I am. Now go kill your family. Or now like whatever, like they're not good. So we need to make sure that we're reaching above the astral plane, the real angels, the real ascended masters that are way above there. And we can kind of tell because we'll notice how we feel. We all as humans have the power of discernment. So let's say somebody walked through the door where you are. Within like 10 seconds, you feel like if they're good, they're bad, or neutral. We just know. We just have that feeling like, ooh, I don't like that person, or that person gives me the heebie-jeebies, or that person's just meh, normal, neutral, or wow, I really vibe with that person. So we don't even have to try to do that. This is just a psychic gift every single person on the planet has. And we can do the same thing with spirits. So when you're dealing with spirits, you want to tune in. Is it feel good? Does it feel neutral? Does it feel bad? If it says it's Jesus and it gives you the heebie-jeebies, it's not.
Right.
And we listen to the messages. Are the messages uplifting? Are they, your real guides will never flatter you, make promises to you. They will never tell you they're going to fix all your problems. That's another lie that those lower level guides will do. Like, you're going to win the lottery. You're going to meet a tall, handsome stranger. You're not going to whatever. Like, our real guides are helping us, but they're not getting in our lives to fix our problems. We have free will. We have to do our own work. And then, I always think it's really good to ask new guides to prove who they are. Okay. So you say you're Archangel Michael. I want proof. I want to see feathers in the next 24 hours. I want to see something that proves to me you're the real deal. And a real guide a real angel, a real ascended master will take that time to give you a sign, omen, or synchronicity, or you check with your pendulum, was that really Archangel Michael? Yeah. Okay, good. And if it's not, then, we have to not fall victim to these trickster guides, really trickster spirits that hang around in the astral plane.
Is there like for the Archangel Michael thing? Is there a way, like you say, to double check that? But how do you know your double check isn't lying?
Well, I think like multiple checks. So does your pendulum say yes? Does a sign and omen actually happen? And I've been around somebody who, like we're like, okay, let's see if this is for real. And I'm not getting like feathers. We're like manifesting out of nowhere. We're standing in the middle of like, some building somewhere, and feathers are just appearing out of nowhere in wherever we were. And how does that happen? Nobody had a down coat on. It was the middle of the summer. Like, it was actually a bit of a miracle. And I think our real guides are going to take the time to prove to us who we really are. And then, so we're checking in with how we feel. We're checking in with our pendulum. We're checking in with signs and omens. We're checking in with the quality of the messages we're getting from the guides, and maybe we're getting like more double checks from our friends who are psychic. Can you just check this one out? It doesn't feel quite right to me. If it doesn't feel quite right to you, it's not. Just like people, you go on a date. How long does it take you to figure out it's not good or it's not right? It's not in alignment. Maybe you have to check with your friends. And if you do like whatever it takes, you know what I mean? And eventually we just learn that's discernment. Discernment is the ability to tell what's going on, who you're dealing with, what kind of being you're dealing with. And it takes time to learn it, but you can.
Which brings me to this question. When I feel them, because I can feel them, and I feel them as a tingle through my hands, going up my arms. Yeah, I can tell whether it's a man or a woman because a man has a heavier tingle.
Interesting. Yeah, cool.
Is that a way that people can feel what's around them that way, or
100%?
Okay.
No, I think that's interesting. I love that you do that. I think people feel all kinds of different things. I feel like the flies walking in my hair feeling, and I feel it like if it's if it's on the right side, it's a man. If it's on the left side, it's a woman, or I can see them, and so I think we all have different physical sensations that we feel. I can always tell if they're stuck too, because I'll feel like vertigo. I feel my stomach flip over. I feel that kind of cold, greasy feeling, like somebody threw a bucket of cold water on you. Your hair stands up a little bit on the back of your neck. I get this metallic blood sort of taste in my mouth. It's impossible to miss, when there's a stuck dead person around. So that's how I feel it. And I think everyone has their own feeling. I call those feelings truth signals. So some people cry, some people get shivers, some people get goosebumps, some people get tingles. We all have something. And that can also be your proof that it's real. You know what I mean? So if you're, if that's also adding up and you're getting your tingles, then you know for sure it's a thing.
Absolutely. What do you say to someone that wants to start working on their abilities?
I think that's great. I think we all should. And I think we need help. We need training. There's this misconception that you're just magically psychic, like without any work. You know what I mean? And that's not true. It's like an ability like any other ability. That's why my book is called, Awakening Your Psychic Ability, because it's like any kind of ability. Just like if you had a ton of musical ability or a ton of athletic ability, you'd still have to work it. You'd still have to practice. You'd still have to have a teacher, and to learn things. Yeah, that's it right there. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so we, I wanted people to let go of this idea that if you're not magically psychic now, you never can be, because that's not true.
Man, this hour has blown by. Look at that. We were just chit-chatting away.
I know, really so super really fun.
I like talking to other psychics because it helps me. It helps me out too.
I love other psychics, and we get to talk. We didn't get this when I was starting out. I didn't have that kind of conversation, so I love having it.
Last question: you're on the Strip in Las Vegas, and there's other psychics, on the Strip with you. Of course, there are in Vegas. How do you draw people in to talk with you?
Like, how do you get clients, you mean? Or how do you get business?
Let's say you got a bunch of people walking the Strip that are having issues with ghosts or whatever, and they want to or get a reading, need to talk to a psychic. So how do you draw them in as opposed to somebody else draw them in?
I think it's just being really honest, being authentic. Like, we send out a vibration, right? So we want to tell our story. We want to share who we are. We want to be really honest, real, authentic. And as we send out that vibration of who we are, it attracts people that want what we have, So like the podcast you're doing, or the books that I write, or whatever we're doing on our social media marketing thing, we're just being real. We're just being who we really are. And that we leave it to resonance. We leave it to vibration. People are going to be like, oh, wow, I really like her vibe. I really like what she has to say. That's going to work for me. So I think the best marketing just comes from deeply being authentic and telling our stories and letting people find us that way.
Absolutely. What's next for you?
Well, I have another book coming out in November. It's a journal, actually, a prompted journal called the Psychic Awakening Journal. So that's pretty exciting. And I'm starting a business class actually in September for I work with people who want to become a professional psychic healers. Because the business stuff is hard. I love entrepreneurship, but not everybody does. So my mission in life is to create an army of healers to go out there and save the world. And that means sometimes we need business help. So we do know how to get clients. But, all that stuff's on my website, all the classes I teach. Sure. I teach Reiki online. I have books for sale. I have 3 books now. So, come visit me on my website, lisacampion.com. Leave me a message. Tell me what you need, and I'll help you, whatever's going on.
Fantastic. Lisa, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. I learned so much. Love talking with other psychics out there, and it was great. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it so much too.
And maybe at some point we'll get you back on down the line.
I hope so. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. You have a good rest of your evening.
Thanks. You too.
Okay, bye. All right. Yeah, I always learn so much when I talk to other psychics. It's great, because I ended up having a lot in common with her, so I enjoyed it. Tomorrow, we're shifting gears. We'll be back at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. We're going to be talking with W.T. Watson about the Canadian Sasquatch. We don't hear a lot about that. So we're going to be be picking his brain. And he not only deals with Sasquatch stories, he deals with dogmen and similar creatures. So we're going to have a real nice, resounding hour to talk with him. I want to thank everybody for coming, and hopefully the dog settles down because he's very active. I want to thank everyone for coming today because I know it was an early show. I appreciate it. And for those of you who had to listen to this after you got off work, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all very much. Man, my eyes look weird because it's just allergy. I'm just so full of allergy right now. But I want to thank you. If you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it with 5 of your enemies, as we are equal opportunity here at California Haunts Radio. And as you heard Lisa talk about opening and closing that psychic door, my Psychic Development Class 1, which I am teaching on the 5th of August, teaches you just how to do that. It teaches you how to open that door, even a crack, and then shut the door, so that way nothing bad will come through. And that's the steps you have to take. You have to learn how to open and close that psychic door. So if you're interested in that, be sure to visit the California Haunts Meetup, California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team Meetup. Go to events and sign up for that class because it's really a good class, and you'll be doing psychic things afterwards. All right. Anyway, if you like what you heard and saw today, please feel free to leave me a thumbs up, a smiley face, hearts. Especially if you're on Facebook, do that for me, please, because that puts us up in the algorithms. Everyone knows the algorithm now. That puts us up higher in the algorithm, and then Facebook distributes this show out even farther. So I'd really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, be sure to follow, because we're doing shows every day, Sunday through Friday, and sometimes on Saturdays. So we're here all the time, okay? Same thing on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed yet and you like what you hear, come on over to YouTube and subscribe on the California Haunts page. That's youtube.com/@California Haunts or California Haunts Radio, either one. And you'll get into our YouTube page. 637 videos sitting over there. And they're all different topics. So I'm sure there's something that you'll find that you like. TikTok, we're over on TikTok. So if you happen to have a TikTok account, come on over and visit us on TikTok. Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, I'm Ghosty Gal. So busy. Anyway, I want to thank you all for coming today. I will see you all tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific with W.T. Watson. Have a great evening.